In contrast to the high-handed way in which the DOE and the CDC and other agencies, state agencies, have conducted health studies on people that themselves felt injured, whether these are Hanford Downwinders or atomic veterans or during the investigation of the experimentation using radiation on prisoners and others that finally came to light. It's the same pattern. You find some experts and you study the people as if the people basically are only objects. That's been the tradition, and it still is basically the tradition of health research. In other words, in order to achieve this presumed, and I say clearly presumed, objectivity of scientific investigation, you eliminate not only the human factor, any influence of compassion or understanding of the people whose suffering you want to elucidate, but you also totally eliminate the social context, both of the population that you study, under what conditions did they live, what was the whole setup of power and influence and so forth. You eliminate all of these factors, plus, of course, you totally eliminate the questions of what drives the science. Who pays the scientists? What are the prevailing unwritten laws as to what research will be funded and what is not? That's never been part of any discussion in public. That goes on usually behind closed doors, and often it's not even there that it is clearly articulated. It is a silently existing ethics, called ethics, that really is a dominating influence. It's a cultural phenomenon in a way. And it's just the same as the social pressures that people feel that school children are already growing up with. They have to have these clothes or else they be really cruelly treated by their fellow schoolmates. And scientists who think for themselves and would criticize even the design that, say, an agency like, well, let's not take the DOE now, but let's take an agency like the National Institute of Occupational Health, NIOSH, safety and health, that's the S, safety. An agency like that wants to study a certain area let's say health and safety in a nuclear plant or in a nuclear. They come up with their question, and they come up basically with what they want to see studies, and then they send it around to the universities, and people can then make proposals. But it's already predetermined what are the questions and how they want them to go about finding them. Now that already greatly limits the possibility of raising the question, is that really the important question? And is that really a fair methodology? Is this leading to more justice? Is this leading to any improvement of the life and the health of the people that we are supposed to study? Those questions can no longer be answered because they have already been predetermined. And that's basically what happened also in this study of the thyroid. And I'll come back to that. But So people that are outsiders and people that have been involved in the controversy around the effects of radiation are people like John Goffman, Alice Stewart, Mancuso, obviously, and several others, and more lately, people like myself, and so forth. And when at a meeting of Physicians for Social Responsibility, we wanted to create a group that deals with Hanford, a study group or an action group, whatever you want to call it. We did the opposite. Instead of us sitting down and saying, now, this I think are the questions that need to be answered and we will design a study, we went to the people who are involved. So we went to our contacts with Downwinders and said, if a group of physicians and scientists who are concerned about your concern, who think you have legitimate reasons to feel betrayed by your government, you feel betrayed by the medical community, because when you raised questions about couldn't there be a relationship between your living downwind of Hanford and the multiple health effects, be it cancers, be it any number of other diseases, you always got the same answer: oh, there's no way that radiation had anything to do with this. We don't know what it is, but you know, if you think it's radiation, there's something wrong with your head. Basically, that was the answer. So we asked these people, if you find a group of open-minded and compassionate scientists who have by virtue of the other work that they have done, either as physicians or as scientists, have a certain degree of credibility, what would you want these people to do on your behalf? That's a totally different approach, right? So, and we ask people, obviously, that have thought about it. Because if you ask just anybody out in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, you can't expect to get a useful answer. Because most of these people know nothing about health scientists, know nothing about what is possible, what is not possible. But we ask people that have done an absolutely incredible job of self-education under the pressure of their own suffering and that of their families and their friends. And so from these people we heard, one thing that you could do is, or a two-pronged approach that you could follow is, one, let us know or write us a letter saying that our concerns are legitimate, that we can take to our physicians, that they cannot simply discount. Because here's a group of physicians and scientists that on the basis of their understanding of the science and the literature say there is a justified concern here. And the second is, instead of allowing all these people to tell us constantly that it couldn't be true, what we observe, at least look at us. At least look at our health status and see what you find. So that was the basis of that research. It's an informal, in a way, it's not a formally set up epidemiological study, but it's an informal attempt to do a health survey among a population of people that basically are self-selected, which is also a weakness, obviously. But at least it gets you to the people and their concerns.
Prior to that, they were not even conducting studies with they weren't making observations of these populations.
No, because they have and this is where we get back to the culture and to the power of, yeah, you could call it brainwashing, basically, on a very sophisticated level. They have very strong preconceived ideas. And the preconceived idea is that the doses that these people were subjected to in the first place until 86, it was complete secrecy that any radioactivity was released. So there was no radioactivity. So if these people are sick, that must be from other things, right? Couldn't be radiation. But even after they admitted that they even deliberately had doused the area with radioactivity, they still came up, well, those doses are much too small. Because we know, in quotes, from the study of the atomic bomb survivors in Hiroshima, who were subjected to totally different kind of radiation, but you know, they never talked about that, and the ordinary people had no idea of the differences. Or what do they know the difference between radioisotopes that are lodged in your body and external gamma radiation from an atomic flash? This is meaningless. So they told the people, but also all the physicians and everybody, because they have the power, they have the media, they have the textbooks, they have all the government produced or financed glossy pamphlets that go out to the health departments, that go out to the clinics and so forth, that yeah, you know, these people claim they are sick, but you know, we know that that can't be related to radiation because we haven't seen any of that among the A-bomb survivors. Yeah, they market
this PR
they market a point of view, and they couch it very, very cleverly in what sounds like scientific jargon. And it is an abuse of science and scientific jargon, but nevertheless, you know, you can tell the truth and still tell a lie. I mean, that's just the way it is. You can say, for instance, and this is what they did, we know of no research that shows any relationship between having been exposed to radioiodine and a possible effect on, let's say, miscarriages. Let's take that example. We know of no research. That's true. But it is an infamous lie to a person who has had 3 miscarriages. Because they never looked whether there could be a relationship. They never did any study that would even come close to answering the question. So now you know what I mean by telling the truth and at the same time telling an infamous and really damaging lie to the people that ask these questions. And that's what happened in this field all along, and it still happens. And unfortunately, I have to be very direct on this. The announced result of the Hanford Thyroid disease study from the Fred Hutchinson scientists is in the same category. To say that we see no evidence of any relationship between thyroid disease and radioactive iodine-131 is exactly the same truth, which is an infamous lie. Because the study was set up in such a way that and the question they asked was more or less a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what they saw has nothing to do with how they interpret their study. What they saw is that a little more radiation or a little less radiation or less contamination with iodine-131, presumably, and again I say presumably, didn't make any difference. Now that doesn't, in the first place, that doesn't mean, even if that were true, it doesn't mean at all there's no effect. It just means that maybe the effect doesn't change with radiation dose, because they didn't look at what really they had no, they hadn't designed that study to include a sufficiently large control group so that you could see whether a totally unexposed population and a population that was even only slightly exposed to iodine showed any difference. And then we come back to that study in a moment later, because inadvertently they have a control group. Inadvertently. And they totally ignore it in their public relations, outpouring, both in their executive summary and in the 200 and whatever number of pages complete report. You have to go in there and look at the numbers, and you find that their own data contradict their public conclusion. And that, to me, is the lowest point of scientific unethical behavior. And I would say that right into the face of Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Davis. And they know it. They must know it. If they don't, then they're really incompetent.
By controlling the study's design, they were able to control the findings. Yet even within this attempt at controlling, they
slipped up. If you want to, I don't think so. I think it just happened. Yes, their design was not it's again, it's a basic attitude about how do you do science. Now, the way I, as a physicist, was trained, you don't totally prejudge your conduct of a scientific experiment. Now, it's very difficult, of course, and questionable whether you can even make the comparison between a physics experiment and an epidemiological study. But I'm not talking about the nitty-gritty. I'm talking about the frame of mind. The frame of mind of a true scientist is that, all right, all of us start from a certain idea, a hypothesis. We then, and that depends on your cleverness, and that's what distinguishes a genius from people that just do the same thing over and over again, what other people already have done, and make a career out of it. The genius lies in having an intuitive approach that is educated by a knowledge of the field, but it is still intuitive. But it is educated by what are the open questions in this field. And so let me design my study, and that you cannot really call anything other than intuition, in such a way that I ask the most crucial, most important questions. What the Fred Hutchinson study did was not ask the crucial questions. Crucial question would be, let's identify people that have thyroid disease, and let's see what we find. Let's ask them all kind of questions. Make it open-ended. Inquire about their history, their medical history. Inquire about other things like, because the literature has shown already, when they conceived that study, that there were questions about relationships between thyroid disease and many other things like birth outcomes. They could have known about it if they really had educated themselves. So when you spend millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, and you already go through the trouble and identify a cohort then you try to get as much information from these people that you can. And you don't have preconceived ideas in advance of what will turn out to be important and what will not be, because you don't know. You first look at all the data, and then you see whether any pattern emerges or whether any really new questions arrive that you didn't even think about. But here they are. Here are some trends, here are some numbers. And they failed to do that. So that already is a truncation of scientific research.